Welcome back, folks. It's Tim here again, and what we're going to do is part 8 here of the Vintage Pioneer SX950 receiver rebuild project. We're getting to the final strokes here. I've got basically one board left to do, and that's the power amplifier board and the smoothing caps, and then I'll follow it up with one more part to complete the electrical or the LED swap out and putting everything back together and doing a final test on this. So I've had to make some compromises with this update, and it's simply because of things that were out of my control. So here's my hit list of all the components, and as you can see, pink is all of the components I've swapped out on the various boards, and there's the master list of transistors and electrolytic capacitors I've ordered, and then of course each one of those is a board that's been done. One was if a B version used these components, that's why it's not pinked out. Mine wasn't a B version board, and so the only board I have left to do here is the power amp board AWH059 according to this sheet, but it's actually 050 in the service manual. So I don't know, whoever, I just pulled this off of our Audio Karma, and I noticed that there were some errors in it. One was specifically calling for a 4.7 microfarad capacitor, and there was actually, sorry, it was calling for a 47, and there was a 4.7 that was actually installed, and that's what the service manual says. So these things aren't the gospel. You got to really double check your work and everything. So good thing I had a spare capacitor kicking around of that ilk, and I was able to use that one. So here's where we ran astray, and that's on the transistors on the power amp board here. I had made a big order. The old transistors were two SA726s, and there was a number of them that were actually on other boards as well. So I ordered a big batch with the intent of transistor matching for the amp board. You don't have to do it for the other boards. And they shortchanged me when they shipped. That was Mauser. Actually, was it Mauser? No, it was Newark, actually. So I couldn't get these ones. They were back ordered on Mauser, and so I ordered them from Newark, and I ordered a good chunk of them so I could transistor match them for the output stage of the amplifier board. And I only really got, I actually only got one extra to do the amp board. So they short shipped me, and I just, quite honestly, I don't have the time to wait for another shipment to come in. So I've made the command decision of just going with the board as is for the transistors. I'll still swap out the electrolytics because they're so old, and probably, in fact, I've been marking all of the readings and values of all the components I've been pulling out, the capacitor components, and quite a few of them were out of tolerance. So I'm actually very surprised this thing was working when I received it. So I've decided to keep the output stage transistors, the matched transistors, in the unit, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's kind of been my philosophy. Transistors last indefinitely. Yeah, they're probably a little bit noisier than the modern ones, but like I say, I just don't have the time to wait for these things. And then of course I have to set up a circuit and measure them all and match them and all that sort of stuff, which is yeah, it's just dragging this project out too long. So I'll do the caps, and then I'll do the DC offset settings to make sure everything's 0 volts to the speaker terminals, and then and then we'll also do the forward biasing on the outputs as well. So yeah. Oh, and then I've also got trimmers, a bunch of trimmers. So I'm going to have a look, see how these trimmers are working. If they're working fine, I probably won't swap them. But if I did order replacement trimmers for it, so if I'm getting sketchy, if I'm not able to dial them in correctly, I'll just probably swap them out and put the new trimmers in. The other part of it is the smoothing caps. And as you can see here are the replacement smoothing caps, the same value of these ones, and of course modern technology makes them much smaller. And what I've planned to do is I've got a 3D printer, and what I find is they're very, very handy for doing projects like these. So the cradles that these old capacitors sit in, they're 50 millimeters in diameter. These are 35 millimeters in diameter. So what I'm going to do is make a spacer, a collar basically, to go around these to fit into that. And usually what I do is leave a gap in it so that they can pinch and grab onto the capacitors so they don't slip. So I'll print those. I'll do a little blurb on the video. I'll design it up in Tinkercad online. It's a free CAD program. And then I'll print it out. And somebody's hot rodding down the street here. And then I'll show how that install goes and install the smoothing caps on this. So part 8 coming up, and we'll do this in time lapse again and see how she goes. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, so looking forward to this. And here's the capacitor sleeves that I've built, and you can actually see I just drafted this up real quick in Tinkercad, and what I do is I leave a gap in them. And so this is the exact height of the collars that the old ones fit in. This is 50 millimeters around there, and that's 35 millimeters there. So the smaller capacitors will fit in there, and then it'll fit into the harnesses for the old capacitors. And I put this little space in just so it just clamps a little bit when you tighten down the capacitor clamps or holders, and enables it to hold onto the smaller capacitors. And I've done it on a number of projects. If you look up my SA8502 amplifier, I did the same thing, and it worked fabulous. So we'll get this printed up. We'll take a little video of it printing, and then we'll do the install. And here's the start of the print job. As you can see, it's kind of dark down here, so I'll take another video when it gets closer to completion, once it starts building structurally up, and then you'll see what they end up looking like. And there you have it. The print is almost done. I gotta wait till it closes off the ends here. But you can see, if you can, there we go. I put the lights on. So you can see the print job coming off as planned. So once that's done, I'll fit them onto the new capacitors, the smaller capacitors, and then we'll mount them onto the receiver. I'll show a little bit of that, and then back to the business. All right, print is complete, and these are the little spacers I've devised to fit these large capacitors, the old style capacitors, which are Nippon Chemicon ones. Negative is the black, and these are the newer ones. They're exactly the same rated capacitors, only with modern technology they can make them much smaller. So while these ones are 22,000 microfarads, so are this, and it's also rated for 63 volts like this one. So in order to fit into these brackets, what I did was I made these spacers, which are sized exactly the same size as the replacements, and the same width or height, I guess, of the bracket that you can see here, so that this will fit in nicely in the correct orientation. And then I just have to cinch these bolts down, and they'll be in there snug as a bug on a rug. So the next thing I'm going to do here is disconnect the bottoms of the filter caps, and yeah, we'll put the new ones in and see how she sounds. Well, I just had a thought before I go and change out these filter caps and do my little spacers. I thought I would, before I disconnect, just to make sure that the board, I didn't do anything to the board, so I changed all the electrolytic capacitors. It was really tight, so I was probably stretching some of these wires a little tightly, so you just want to make sure that nothing's been disconnected or problematic. So shouldn't have changed the balancing, the bias, and all that stuff just by changing out the caps. Might have, but I'll get to that. I'm actually going to do the DC offset and bias here pretty quick after I do the filter caps and everything. Yeah, so what I want to do is just quickly flash it up. I've got it on FM. I don't have any other inputs right now. Got the wires hooked into my Dynaco A25 speakers there, and we'll just power it on. Should go through the relay, should click in, and then we'll turn up the volume and just make sure that it's working correctly. So power's on, lights are on. As you can see, relay just clicked. I got the volume turned down. I think I'm on a radio station. And there you go. Well, I'll be darned, I had a little bit of a scare there, but you know what? Expecting to get a perfect result every time you put the boards together. I've been very lucky up until now. I only had one other problematic board, and that was the power supply board, the most complex one. A wire had come loose, and it took me a while to troubleshoot that. And this was not any different. So I reassembled the board down here, the amplifier board, and lo and behold, the problem is this board is extremely tightly fit in here, and there's not a lot of play on any of these wires. And I was really reluctant to disconnect all of these leads because the simple fact that these are all wound connections, and they're probably the best connections you can get. And I only disconnect them if I absolutely have to, and I'll have to do that on the bottom of these filter caps here. It's not as good to do a solder joint, especially because you don't have a lot of length of wire to play with, and relying just on solder alone to make the terminal with these hand wound connections, they're by far the best. So I don't like to monkey with that. So because of that, I had to unscrew from the this metal bracket here. I had to unscrew screws where that holds onto the metal bracket, and then I had to sort of push it as far down as I could, flip it upside down, and then I only had, and you'll see in the video, I only had about that much distance to play with to get my soldering gun up in there to decouple the capacitors. The worst ones were these because they're higher up on the board. I had the most space on the bottom, and as it came, it's kind of like a wedge. As it came up to the top, I had not much space. So anyway, I did the best job I could of soldering them in. They're all in the right orientation. I know that for a fact. I double checked that. And what ended up happening was I actually missed one of the terminals because it was blocked by one of the leads that I had just freshly soldered in, cut it off. Didn't notice the other ones. I kind of did a bunch at the same time. And so consequently, I put everything together, cranked it up, and my right channel was just not working. It was dead in the water. So I tried a bunch of other things. First obvious thought was maybe in pulling everything tight, maybe I had disconnected or broken a lead or something like that on the bottom or the top connection. So I looked at all of those very, very closely. Then I had to take it all apart, make my wedge again, looked inside with a really bright flashlight, and sure enough, I had missed one lead. I'd cut it off, but I actually missed, when I was soldering it, I missed putting the blob of solder on it. So it was just sitting empty in the hole. I put that on, tested it, still no right channel. And then I just went and resoldered all of the 4 caps on the right channel here. And put that together again, and now it must have been a cold solder joint or something like that, because now, if I turn it on, or turn it up, I've got it running right now. Look at that, right channel and left channel. So it's just a matter now of reassembling it, putting it all together nice and tiddly, and of course I was also measuring all the transistors because I thought maybe I toasted a transistor or something like that. So I measured all the legs and they were all good, and happy thoughts. The amp board is together. The next thing I'm going to try is, I'm going to do the filter caps first, as I mentioned previously, and then once that's all done, then I will do the DC offset and bias settings, and hopefully that'll get everything nice and tuned together. And then the only other thing I really need to do is the lights, and then reassemble everything, and then I've got a beautiful working SX950. So a really good learning project. I've learned a lot on this. I've only done a sort of an SA8500 Series 2 on my own, and this is kind of like one of the bigger projects I've done. Other than all the Dynaco kits, but those are just easy kits because you get instructions and stuff, and I've done dozens of those. But this is the first ground up, big ground up project that I've done in a long while. So thanks for watching. We'll do part 8 next, and that'll be putting everything together. But more to follow here as I do the filter caps and get everything buttoned up on this. Well, there we have it. It ain't pretty, but it works. yeah, it was a little tough getting these little nibs of terminals on these little caps that I bought, and man, it was a bugger to solder on. I wish I had much longer terminals like these ones. They're a dream to work with. These things are just little nubs, and supposed to be put into a board, I suspect. But nevertheless, after much cajoling, I managed to get her done. And so let's do a sound track check here. I can never get this thing to work. Okay, so we'll power it on. We'll get our relay kicks in. Everything's no arcing, no nothing. And I've got it on auxiliary. And there we go. A little Black Sabbath, I guess. And we'll just jump songs. So. There we go.
The men push themselves and their equipment to the limit, playing an endless succession of one-night stands. Will they ever get to the point where it isn't touch and go?
The reason I'm leaving it on its side is I still got to do the bias and everything, and I got to get at the terminals on the bottom there. Otherwise, I'd be playing it right side up, because that's the next phase. And it's both channels. So there you have it. It's all working. So next phase is going to be doing the bias and or DC offset and the bias, and we should pretty much be done all electronics. So right on. Back again. I decided to. It was pretty late last night, so I put things to bed and decided to start fresh this morning. And Saturday morning, and now I'm going to do the DC offset and bias settings. And rather than go through it, if you look at this, this is a page out of the manual that actually gives the procedure on how to do it. There's a really good video, so I'm not going to film this one, by a fellow by the name who has a channel called Blue Note Audio, and he has a he actually films the procedure for an SX850, which is exactly the same as the 950, and he walks through the whole procedure, and he does a much better job than I ever could. So I'm using his procedure to set my DC offset and bias, and I'll just basically do it and report back how it went. And then the other thing I found out is there's another guy by the name of Max Arcade, and he does a rebuild. I think it was the 850 as well, or it might have been a 950. Anyway, these switches here are really terrible to get into, and he has a video on refurbishing. I think it was an 850 as well, like the Blue Note Audio guy, and he actually shows how to get into those switches, and I didn't want to tear into them, but looked like from his procedure that it's not that hard, not that difficult. So I'm going to go back and do it because I've got a noisy AM switch that I need to sort out, and I think what I'm going to do is take the tops off those push button switches, because I hear they get quite noisy, and they I tried spraying on the outside, and of course it doesn't get inside to clean the contacts very well. So I'm going to try and open them up and do a much better job of cleaning those switches. So more to follow. All right, next I'm gonna proceed. So I cleaned out the switches again. I didn't need to show that because I already took them apart last time. I did have one problem with the multiplex switch here. It kind of fell apart, so I tried to reassemble it. Actually, it was the other one, the filter switch, and yeah, it works, but it just doesn't spring load back. So it's a switch I never use. So I'm gonna try and find a replacement board, because those are built onto the board. Really tricky things to take apart, so I wouldn't recommend it. You can take the top off, but make sure you don't move it or anything. Give it a good squirt, put the top back on, and then clean it. So that was my lesson learned for the day. Good thing it was a switch that was not very important on the receiver. Like I say, it'll work, but it's just not spring-loaded anymore. And man, it's so tiny and delicate. You need a surgeon's hands to fix those. So, and then one of the tabs broke off, so it's a bit off angle. Anyway, it's just a gong show. So, yeah, I'm going to try and source another board. Might be a long time coming, so I'll just live with it the way it is for now. And so the next thing I'm going to do is my LED light kit, which I have kicking around here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So we got stereolamps.com, and for now I've actually decided I'm going to keep with the actual bulbs for the main display. The reason is I have a whole hockey sock full of them, and then rather than ripping the wiring apart and everything, it actually glows quite nicely. So I'm going to keep those in, and what I'm going to do is all the ones that are burnt out and I don't have replacement bulbs for are the speaker switches, the stereo light, and the input selector indicators. So these tiny little ones here. So what I'm going to do is take the plexiglass piece off here, which transmits the light along for the faceplate, and I'm going to take this assembly apart, and then I'll have access to these wells. Basically, you have to unscrew them from the back. I've seen there's a couple of videos online how to change these out. So we'll give that a try. Of course, with diodes, you got to make sure that they're the right way around. So I'll have to figure out which is positive, negative, and see how it turns out from there. All right, so let's proceed. Well, I'm complete. That is all the hard stuff. And now all I have to do is put the cabinet back on, faceplate, and this is the one issue with the faceplate here. You can see there's a little bit of a smile in the glass there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it back together just because I can't wait to try this out. I'm going to measure this thing up, and I'm going to order another piece of glass for it. If not, I've got actually plexiglass that I can use, and I can easily core out that the hole for the tuning knob. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use, I've got some really clear plexiglass about the same width, thickness as this, and it actually looks better than this. This is, you know, I cleaned it up with Windex, but it's still a little bit hazy and stuff. So, so yeah. That's what I'm going to do. That'll come a little bit later, but first I'm gonna use this right now, and well, I'll measure it up and then use it right now. We'll assemble it. I'm not going to film assembling this whole thing, putting the faceplate and everything back on. I think there's enough videos out there, and the service manual is pretty good at showing you how everything goes together and comes apart. It's pretty straightforward. So yeah, all the lights now work. I decided to go with LEDs all the way around, just because it's such a bear changing the, actually these ones aren't that bad, but you just pop these two ones, it's missing the two Stanley sockets, so I had to actually spread the contacts out on the LEDs and solder them to the rails. So it's fairly easy to change them, but you know what? Why change them? If I don't have to change them for a lifetime, that's the way I'm going to go. Yeah, so gonna put it all together, put it down in my sound system, and see how she rolls. Thanks for watching.